Good afternoon, and welcome to DNA Day, hosted by the Family Search Library in partnership with Roots Tech. My name is Tanner Tolman, and I will be moderating today's presentations. Today, we will present 7 classes. This is the 4th one, and we are so glad that you could join us. Before we get started, we have a couple of housekeeping items. These classes are being live streamed on several platforms, including the Family Search Library's Facebook page and rootstech.org. The recordings of these classes will be available on rootstech.org in the next few days. We have created a wiki page for today's class content that has the handouts for all the individual classes. I will post the link into that. I'll post the link in the chat momentarily for that. Our presenters will answer questions at the end of each presentation as time allows. Please post your questions in the chat or comment section, and we will pass questions along to the presenter at the end of class. If you need help with a specific DNA research problem, we encourage you to sign up to meet one-on-one with our research specialists in a free 40-minute virtual consultation. Go to the Family Search Library's website at familysearch.org/library and click Research Help. If you want to view the upcoming webinars taught by the Family Search Library, go to the Family Search Library's Classes on Webinars wiki page, which I'll also post in just a second. And recordings of our previous classes can be found on our Facebook page. You go to Facebook and you search for Family Search Library and you click on videos, and I'll also post the link to that. So let me introduce the presenter for this next class, Savannah Larson. Savannah is an accredited genealogist and is an enthusiastic bookworm. She earned her bachelor's degree in family history from Brigham Young University and currently works as a Nordic research specialist at the Family Search Library. During her university training, Savannah received ample DNA experience while collaborating with the DPAA on military repatriation projects. When she's not unraveling family histories, Savannah enjoys sipping Dr. Pepper, spending quality time with her family, and going down the rabbit hole of the latest Taylor Swift conspiracy. So we'll now turn the time over to Savannah.
Thank you, Tanner. I'm really excited to be here today. So my case is Heaps of Clues, navigating DNA to uncover your mystery match. The objective of this case is to help you understand the importance of finding your most recent common ancestor with your matches. It also shows you how DNA and records can work together, and it can teach you to learn how DNA is affected by rural families. Most of the most recent common ancestors in this case originate from the one small town. And so I wanted to show how that can affect how you show up with your matches and how you interact with your matches as well. I also wanted to just kind of leave a note that this case has been simplified to focus on like some of the major points. And while we used many testing companies and a lot of different techniques to prove these conclusions, I tried to simplify it down to the most logical progression so that it would be easy to follow for a presentation format. So let's start with initial testing. My friend Sarah tested her DNA as just like a gift that she got for her birthday. And so she got her DNA results back, and the matches all tended to be pretty normal and expected. She didn't expect anything out of the ordinary on her family. And when she got her results back, everything was fairly normal. Most of her big matches were aunts or uncles or first cousins once removed. And because she was a genealogist, she was able to kind of point out where those relationships were made. The only one that didn't make sense to her was Melody. Melody was a 525 centimorgan match, and Sarah had no idea how she was related to Melody or who Melody was. So we sent out a message to Melody to see if they were related somehow, or to see what Melody knew that they could add. But we really wanted to get into how they were related. We jumped to their shared page to see if Melody had a tree that was linked, and she does not. And so we were waiting on that message, but still wanted to figure out what we could in the meantime. And so we took that 523 centimorgans and decided to jump over to DNA Painter. I feel like that's the first stop for most people when they're beginning research. If we put 523 centimorgans into DNA Painter, we get these relationships where you're not in like the immediate relationship family, just a little bit more removed, half aunt and uncle, first cousin once removed, first cousin level. Still all relationships that Sarah felt were too close for her not to know the person. So we were wondering what was going on. We also, based on the age of Melody in the picture that was given, kind of inferred or guessed at the generation that she would be part of, and we're able to kind of eliminate some of the options. She, from what we could tell, appeared to be in like the aunt or uncle or great aunt or uncle range, and maybe a cousin once removed. So based on that, we also wanted to do what we could with our matches while we waited for Melody's response. So we looked at the shared matches, and we had a list of like 3 very high matches. And so we decided to start going through them. And we started with RM, obviously that very first one at the top. They had a really good public tree and a common ancestor already listed. And if we look at RM's tree, it was really easy to identify our relationship to RM as a first cousin once removed through the common ancestors Alva and Devin. And so we had that easy relationship, and now we were trying to figure out, okay, so how is Melody related if this is our possible common ancestor? And so we thought that one possibility could be that she's a great or a half great aunt to Sarah. Another option was that she was a half aunt to Sarah. And another feasible option is that she would be a great great aunt to Sarah through one generation back through William and Ruth. And so knowing this, we had a couple theories to go off of it. And this is when Marcia finally answered back. And so with Melody answering back, we learned a little bit more about her. Melody was adopted and looking for info on her bio parents. And so that was really good to know because that kind of helps us figure out what the story is going on here. We also learned that she was born in September of 1946 in St. Joseph's Hospital. And so those were 2 really critical clues for us to help us kind of place her in the tree somewhere. So if we look back at our results, we decided that we're going to put all of these people on a timeline to see which one was most likely there at the time. And for privacy reasons, I don't go into the records, but I'll tell you what the results of the record research was in the next few pages. So we've got Melody. She was conceived possibly in December of 45 and born in August of 46. Then we've got the first option, Ruth and William Willard, which isn't really an option because William died in 1944 and Ruth was aged 72 in 1945. So they aren't possible parents. We can rule them out and move on to the next set. So we wanted to kind of cover Alva and Karen at the same time, just because they are a family unit of themselves too. And we learned that Karen was born in 1943. So she would have been 2 years old at the time that Melody was conceived, and definitely not an option for a mother. And then Devin Marsh was away on military service during this time. And so he was out of the country from 44 to 47 and would not have been anywhere near this town during that time period. So the only possibility really is for a mother or for a parent in this case would be Alba. So if we go back to the tree, we've got, we ruled out the great great aunt theory, we ruled out the half aunt theory. And so we think that the most likely option here is that Melody is a half great aunt of Sarah. And so with that, we had a fairly good, like, comfortable theory. And luckily at the time, we had given Karen a Christmas gift of a DNA kit. And so it was in process at the moment that we figured this part out. And we were able to kind of um, move forward with that. So um, at that point, we were waiting for those results from the DNA kit to come back. And we decided to reach out to Karen to see if she knew anything about Alva having another child. While Karen was very small at the time, her memory included that Alva did work for a doctor in another city when her kids were very young. We looked into, like, she remembered the name of the doctor. And so we were able to look into that doctor and found an obituary for him. And that obituary stated that he was a doctor and worked as an OBGYN at St. Joseph's Hospital, which, if you remember, was the same place that Melody was born. And so, again, we've got this really good story. And then to kind of tie it all together, we got the results for Karen back, and she and Melody shared 1,780 centimorgans, which puts her right in line with being a half sibling. And it fits the story, it fits the DNA, everything seems like it's matching here. And so we confirmed to the mother, we believe it to be Alva. Then the question was, well, who was Melody's father? And at this point, Melody and Sarah, we were all talking together and kind of communicating to try and figure this out. So she was sharing some of her match results with us to help us to know where to go next. So we did. Um, she shared one of her results with us that was also very high that she couldn't figure out, and it was an ancestry member, KA. And so KA shared about 935 centimorgans with Melody, but had no family tree on Ancestry. We figured the likely relationships there were a great grandparent, a half aunt, or a half niece. And again, based on the generations, we believed half aunt was the most likely scenario there. So we did a little bit of sleuthing. KA didn't have a tree on Ancestry, but she did have a lot of public records that we were able to use to find her. So using True People Search, Ancestry.com, and Facebook, we were able to identify the mother of KA as Lily. And then we were able to find Lily's obituary. And Lily's obituary mentions that she is the daughter of Jonathan and Maxine, which puts us at the right generation and the right age for Jonathan to be a potential father of Melody. And so we had this great scenario happening. We did look at other DNA results too, to confirm this, and we created a Watto tree just to confirm these results as well. So we wanted to make sure that it wasn't one of Jonathan's brothers, but the DNA for the descendants of the brothers was not nearly as high as the DNA with KA. And as a result, the hypothesis with Jonathan as the father and Melody being a half sibling to Lily were about 201 more times likely than the next hypothesis, which would have been Jonathan's father or one of his brothers. So we had a really great hypothesis here with Jonathan as the potential father, Alva as the mother, and we've got several matches that support this. 3 listed, but there were much more than that in the initial research. So we wanted to do a little bit of research to make sure Jonathan was in the right place at the right time. And we did find that Jonathan lived in a different city in the same state. But we also found that his parents lived in the same town as Alva and that he grew up there. And we also want to remember that conception happened around Christmas time, which means it is very likely that he would have been in town to visit his parents for the holidays. But still, Even with that, we were feeling just a little unsure and wanted a little bit more proof. So we were going to go back to the match list to see if we could find a few more matches to confirm what we were looking at. Here, I'm just going to come right back to Melody for a second so that we understand that Sarah and Melody share 523 centimorgans. For the relationship we found for them, half-great aunt, the average amount of DNA shared in that relationship is about 431 centimorgans. So Melody does share a lot of DNA with Sarah and a little bit more than we would expect. Still within range, but a little more than we would expect. And we do know that all of the common ancestors are from the same small town. Knowing this, we wanted to keep our eyes out for the potential of a second connection. And as we were going through the matches, we found one. The second match in the shared match list between Sarah and Melody was RS. And RS, if we compared the three kits together, RS shared 365 centimorgans with Sarah, shared 73 centimorgans with Melody, but shared no DNA with Karen, which is suspect. But when we did look at her tree in Ancestry, it's a very tiny tree, but it does have her father listed as Thatcher Wilson. And if we, as I was talking to Sarah about this, she was like, I know Thatcher. She knows Thatcher because Thatcher is her great grandfather. And so she was really excited about finding this connection. That was a really close connection. And we found that RS was actually related, was the daughter of Thatcher through his second wife, Alcea. And so we have this really easy, close connection, which would explain why Sarah is related to RS. But we were wondering, does that mean that Melody is related through Alcea? We figured that was the most likely scenario, so we decided to kind of dig into it and see what we could find for Alcea and see if we could connect it to the potential father that we already had. And we were able to. We followed Alcea up through the Heaps family to the common ancestors, Thomas Heap and Susanna Goldthorpe. And then we were able to follow it back down to Jonathan, who was our potential father for Melody. And Jonathan and RS were second cousins once removed, which puts Melody and RS at a third cousin relationship, which fits perfectly with the 73 centimorgans. So with all of that in mind, we've got quite a convoluted tree. I tried to map it out, and I had to map it out two different ways, just to kind of keep my brain straight on what was going on with this tree, and what we were seeing. So here's the first one. So we've got RS related through Thomas Heaps to Jonathan. Jonathan had the daughter Lily, who had KA. And on these two sides, those two are relations to Melody. Then we have Alva, who married Devin and had two kids, Sharon and Karen. And Sharon had the child RM, and then Karen had Sarah's father and Sarah. Karen married William, who then his father was Thatcher, who had a half sibling who is RS, who goes back through Alcea. And so this tree, you could like literally take it on a piece of paper and wrap it around in a circle and connect it. That's how convoluted the story ended up being because of the small town connections. But because of that extra connection with RS, we were able to solidify all of the relationships that we had. Another version of this tree puts Sarah at the middle and then has everybody kind of on the outside with Melody connecting on both sides. But same tree, just a different organization of how it is organized. So this case was quite a fun one to do. Some learnings that we found quite quickly as we were researching this case is that contacting your matches is a really great way to go. The collaboration leads to more success. And I understand that like a lot of people won't answer. But whenever possible, if you can find those super genealogists who love to answer and love to have the conversations, then that will help you a ton. And sometimes it takes a couple of contacts in a certain family to find the person who's the genealogist and who wants to talk. But don't give up. Contacting your matches will definitely help the collaboration and speed the process. And then the other thing that was really important is that record research was so valuable in this one. We could not have done it without being able to find the records and obituaries and censuses that put the people in the right place in the right time. It also helped us to rule out some options by knowing when people were out of town, when people were away on military leave, and knowing who was an option and who wasn't based on where they were living at the time. We did find that the small town research added a higher CM match, and that sometimes a confirmed match with a higher CM amount might indicate a second relationship. This is not always the case, but it's something to keep in mind if you are working in a really small town where the names just keep repeating. You might be looking at a double relationship, so that's good to keep in mind as you're looking through the records and trying to connect the person to your family. And then we also learned that public records can help bridge the gap. One of my favorites is True People Search. I find that one extremely helpful to find living people. I also use Facebook quite a bit and have become really great at Facebook stalking and looking through shared friends and different things for possible family relationships. And if you have specifically a US case, that's a really great way to jump from the known to the deceased ancestor where the records will be found. So that is the basic learnings from this case and this case study. And now I'm ready to open it up for questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that awesome presentation. Lisa on Zoom says, have you put this family tree into Banyan DNA?
I have not. I didn't feel, I guess this, some background. Sorry, I'm just kind of a little scrambled. Some background on this. This case happened with me and Sarah researching this case. It happened about 4 years ago. And so there weren't quite as many tools when we were doing it initially. And so we have, like, I definitely would do it differently today. And I tried to simplify it down so that it would look more like the process I did today, but we didn't put it into Banyan DNA at the time.
Yeah, Banyan DNA is a pretty new tool. So
Okay.
yeah, that's why is it didn't
Yeah.
exist when she did
I didn't
this.
even think about it. Yeah. So like, and it's pretty solidly solved now. So um yeah, it didn't even cross my mind to do it when Banyan came out.
Awesome. Um, Ara on Zoom says, what software did you use to create the tree?
Just the one in my slideshow.
I think so, yeah.
I just created boxes and lines in PowerPoint. And that's how I did it originally too, just because I felt like PowerPoint was easiest to work with to create such a messy tree. Um, and I know other people use online versions as well, but I've just felt that PowerPoint has the flexibility I need to create a tree like that.
Awesome. Um, some people are asking about Banyan DNA. So basically what it is, I'll put a link to it in the chat. It's a new tool. It's designed to help you calculate relationships when the people are related in multiple ways, right? So like, what are the odds? Kind of assumes, and the Shared Centimorgan project assumes that the people are only related in one way. So Banyan will help you figure out how much DNA to expect when, say, people are like first cousins on one side and like a second cousin on another side. A banyan tree is a unique type of tree in Africa where what it does is it grows up and then it roots actually come down out of the branches. And so some of the roots start up high in the branches and then go underground. And so the tree just looks very unique and messy. And so that's why it's named that. But I'm going to put a link to that in the chat. Let's see. Gwen says, I've noticed the small town double cousin relationship effect in pre-revolutionary Braintree, Massachusetts, and Londonderry, New Hampshire, both with colonial research. So yeah, that's interesting. I've noticed a little bit of the same thing in my ancestors in Star Valley, Wyoming. I think when you just have a small community, um, eventually people just start to intermarry. And so if it goes on long enough, it can cause like Jewish endogamy. But yeah, it can happen locally in, in small towns. Um, let's see. If anyone else has any other questions, go ahead and ask them. I think that was actually all of them. So let's see. Carol on Zoom says, would you please repeat how to indicate an adoptee on Family Search?
Okay, let me see if I can pull up a family search tree real quick. Sorry. It'll take me a minute to pull up the tree and then I'll pull it onto my screen. Um, I feel like things load slower when you want them to load fast. Okay. I've pulled up a random relative. Okay, when it comes to the relationship type, and it's been a second since I've done this, so forgive me if it takes a couple clicks. I believe next to the child, there's a little pencil button. If you click on the pencil button, you can add the relationship type to the parents. And that includes biological, adoptive, foster, guardian, and step. And so you would just click on adoptive, give a date if you've got one. That doesn't even make sense because the child wasn't born yet. And then click save. And now I'm going to remove that because that's not correct. But yeah, that's how you add the adoptive relationship on Family Search.
Awesome. Yeah, and yet you can add both types of relationships. Um, let's see. Okay, Fancy Free 20 on YouTube says, how does the estimate on DNA Painter change when dealing with half relatives? I have a lot of those, and they often throw off the estimations I am given.
How would you answer that, Tanner?
So the Shared Centimorgan project has a separate box for like a half first cousin and a full first cousin. I think they might be talking about the What Are the Odds tool. And so when you're using that tool, you need to actually tell it that they're half relationships. Otherwise, it will assume they're full. And so you just hover over the box of one of the children, and then there will be a button that says define half relationships, and you tell it who's a full and who's a half. So if you're just telling it that they're all full siblings when they're really some of them aren't, yeah, that's going to mess up your Watto trees.
And I have realized in the past I've struggled with half relationships there too. I did use What Are the Odds Plus to create this tree, which I didn't have at the time that I was doing this, of course. And I noticed that it was a lot easier to define the half relationships. And it's a lot more intuitive with having the hypothesis for the parent instead of the hypothesis for the kid. If you've struggled with it in the past, the problem may go away now. With what are the odds plus, it may be a little bit easier and more intuitive to put those half relationships in.
Yeah, what are the odds plus? I'm a big fan of. It's got all the same math and science as what are the odds, but it's designed to be so much more user friendly, and just clearer for people to understand. So
Definitely.
definitely, yeah, use it. Um, okay, well, that looks like that was all the questions. One person corrected me. The banyan tree apparently is actually from India, not Africa. So my bad. Uh,
Well, um, but yeah, I must have sped talk through that because I swear I planned it to be longer, but thank you guys for your patience.
you're good. I have found that
Oh.
usually every time I teach a class, the first time I do a dry run is always the one that takes the most amount of time. And then every time I practice it, it just gets shorter and shorter somehow. So totally normal.
Yeah.
Um, Carol says, "Do you have a link for what are the odds plus?" Yeah, I can go ahead and put that into the chat. It's on DNA Painter. I recommend you make a free account on DNA Painter. Otherwise, it won't save. And as soon as you close the tab, your Watto Plus will go away.
Um,
So,
the last I checked, you actually had to sign into a free account in order to access it in the first place.
oh, that's
Um,
probably true. Yeah, I'm always signed in. I'm always using
yeah.
that site. Um, Yeah, well, DNA Painter is one of the three websites, one of the three third-party tools that I subscribe to. So I highly recommend it.
It's an extremely helpful tool, and everything there has been like everything there is useful, and will be used in multiple cases if you're really getting into DNA.
Um, yeah, so yeah. So the link I just gave you guys is for Watto Plus. Yeah, that's just a new version of Watto. The other website I really like is GEDmatch, as far as contacting people, just because in order to get into GEDmatch, you have to buy a test from another company and then go to the effort of downloading the DNA and then uploading it to GEDmatch. And it takes somebody who's more interested in DNA to do that. And so I think that people on GEDmatch are more likely to respond to you than just random people on Ancestry, because they've kind of self-selected, right? It's a list of people who are a little bit more interested in genealogy. So just uh, just some thoughts there. Betsy says Banyan DNA is a tool that helps with genetic genealogy by visualizing family trees and analyzing relationships to matches. It can help identify unknown parents, grandparents, or great grandparents, and can alert users to places in their tree where shared DNA doesn't support the documentation. It can also test hypotheses about complex family relationships within the same tree. Well, yeah, it's a pretty cool tool, and it's like brand new. I think it just debuted at Roots Tech even. Um, Somebody is asking for the link to, I guess, the original Watto tool. So I'll give you that one as well. I do recommend, in most cases, Watto Plus. Um, Quite a bit better tool.
And it's so much easier to use.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Our next class is going to be at 1:30, and that is going to be Using DNA to Determine Relationships by Beth Taylor. So we've got a little bit of time scheduled now for those of you who want to go get food. Don't want to miss the presentation. Now's a good time to go grab a sandwich, things like that. I'm going to go ahead and post the handout for those of you who are here, in case any of you just want to try and get it printed or whatever. But whoops. There's the handout for our next class. So thanks so much for being here, and we'll see you in 25 minutes.